a show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on GTV. This is The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition as we continue on the road to April 20 and 24 general elections here in the Virgin Islands. My guest today is a very young man who has put himself up to be one of those in government come following those dates. Daniel
Yes.
Davies.
Daniel Davies. Yes.
I got. I was thinking of the F. I always struggle to pronounce the F in your
Don't worry about
name.
that because you're not going. Don't worry about that because you're not going to see that name on the ballot paper. You're going to see Daniel Robert F. Davies. Mm-hmm. That's the name you're going to see. So if you believe it is time for a change, put a little shade next to my name.
Shade or X. I was blown away to learn of that development. That's why we have to keep abreast with what's going on, because before time we never shaded.
Yes, on last election we shaded.
We shaded in the last election too?
Because they moved now from the they moved to the voting machine.
Yeah, I did not remember the shading part, but awesome. Reminders are great, and I first want to applaud you for your bold step. Some people say it's not a bold step, it's just a step. What do you think?
Well, I would say, well, I could come back with that. It's a one step for me, is a great step for the Virgin Islands. So again, vote for me.
I guess we're going to be hearing that throughout this discussion.
Not really, because it comes from. If you can adapt the phrase, you can adapt the phrase to say, well, one small vote for me is a great vote for the Virgin Islands. You see? So you can have it like that.
Some of the nights will be running on throughout the campaign. But you know what I found really interesting, and I'm so eager to hear from you. Why? Chant down.
Oh, yes. My theme song is Chant Down Babylon One More Time, or Chant Down Babylon. Really and truly, I picked that theme song quite deliberately because I think the people have been failed by the current system. They're being failed by the current party system, and if we want change, we are going to have to free our minds from the shackles of the party system, which was designed, I think, to really keep us back. By design, it keeps us back.
In what way, Daniel?
Okay, so you have a system that according to the Constitution, where you have 5 cabinet level ministers, you have 2 junior ministers, and we only have 13 elected members in the House of Assembly. Yeah. only 13 elected and voting members. So the ministers already form over half of the government, well, of the elected representatives, and naturally that leads to a situation where on most things the executive has a dictatorship within the House. You see, the other reason why I think the party system hasn't worked, well, it just clearly based on of experience, really. I can't see that the party system has, in of itself, produced much results for the Virgin Islands in the past 30 years.
So that's why you would have made that decision to go independent?
Yes. I want to be the outsider in this one. I can defend my own record, and I'm not going to defend the record of others. Because if I can't defend something, I generally don't.
That would have probably come from your legal background?
Yes, because as a lawyer, we must give our clients the best representation possible. But at the same time, if a client comes and tells me, well, straight out, this is a lie, but I want you to say it, I'm certainly not going to engage in that sort of behavior. right? Also, I'm not going to put forth a defense to the court, which I know is going to fail because it's indefensible. You know, I'll give my client the best representation as possible, but there are certain ethical duties that one has, and one of them is, according to the Legal Professions Act, is really not to pursue things that are utter waste of everybody's time.
Help me to understand where you see yourself fitting in perfectly in the government structure.
Well, it really depends, you know. Right now, if I may have to be a part of the opposition if I get in or when I get in, but fundamentally, I will work with anyone that will work for the people, right? Because it's not about me, but I want to know how they're going to implement the solutions, because there are a lot of solutions out there, you know, a lot of good ideas, but there seems to be a lack of information on how these things can be implemented. And I've actually come up with a way of implementing things. And what I would say is that issues that arise out of a community, problems usually arise out of the community, therefore the solutions are to be found within the community. You have to get community involvement in the implementation. And what I mean by that is that, okay, after we are elected, we should have a town hall meeting, a general town hall meeting on each of the islands, and we find out from them what their priorities are, right? We create action points, right? We then have another town hall meeting at the end of the quarter to see what action points have been done and accomplished, and what further action points need to be created. We confirm the minutes, and there may be things that arise from the minutes of the last meeting. Very important to have those minutes taken. And this way you're getting the buy-in of the community into help driving the solution. You also have to approach your permanent secretaries. The ministers would have to approach the permanent secretaries in a very respectful manner. And you have to sit down with them and figure out, okay, what are the priorities for the ministry, right? And how do your priorities fit in with those, into that list, you know? And how can you work them in? And the reason why I suggest that approach is because we can no longer be in a situation where we change government and the entire program of the ministry is disrupted because of that change of minister. There needs to be some form of continuity, right?
Do you think there is a breakdown in that area currently and in the past?
I think so. I mean, from all of the projects that were played, that were political football. If you recall how many years it took for the hospital to be built, because every time one party got in, well, I think it was started under NDP, then the VIP got in, and certain things changed, and I think it was completed under the second NDP administration, and then some other things were changed, though, before that completion. So it's, you know, you're playing political football with some of these projects, and I don't think that is, and that's a sign of disruption. Okay. That's a sign that certain things are being disrupted.
As you mentioned the word hospital, I think I want to take you there a little bit more. Looking at the current situation, we hear the complaints every day, both from patients visiting and their families, to the staff there in the hospital, saying that, you know, they are not properly
compensated,
outfitted, everything as it relates to delivering that health care that we really should have. I've just been reading something where someone talked about, you know, having a patient there requiring certain services and some basic stuff, you know, that is only left for dead for that patient, and more so the NHI part of it, where, you know, the person does not have another insurance company that can foot the bill. So wrapping it around, you know, one thing that I look at, and I know a lot of people look at, what you see, how you present yourself oftentimes tell the story of what's inside. We have an hospital for years since after the hurricanes. The signage there, it does not say hospital, it says something else
But-
because of missing characters. For years, that the hospital has been renamed the Dr. D. Orlando Smith Hospital, and there has not been an official ceremony or branding of that sort.
Well, I think, honestly, my personal opinion is that the official naming and official branding is unimportant compared to the grand scheme of things. Hospital workers are unfortunately underpaid. The executive are making pretty good bucks, but those persons that have to work through the disease, through cleaning up feces, to all sorts of pathogen, they're not being properly compensated. I know of a few people that are making about $1,200 a month, and that's before they take out NHI, Social Security, and tax. That's what my understanding is. And so you really have a moldy situation. That combined with the fact that the hospital is rife with mold, as many government buildings already are. Well, government buildings are, like for example, the administrative complex before Hurricane Irma hit it, there were a lot of complaints about black mold inside of that building. And so the hospital, we had to take a HR, we have to take something to, we have to look at the HR policies. We have to look at the salary scales firstly in the HR. And given that it's a statutory body, I expect that information to be easily obtainable. And once you pull that data, you can then analyze it over the course of a month to see what salaries or where salaries need to be raised. Well, all salaries probably need to be raised at the lower levels, and to see how you can better motivate your staff. You know, because working 12-hour shifts is not easy. Working through pathogens and very grumpy people because they're sick.
Situations.
Yes, they're placed in the heart of risk.
That brings me to the point as we talk about salary. What is now being dubbed, according to Kishma and Cindy, it's now that name, the greedy bill.
Yes.
Rather, it was Kishma indeed, yes, that called it that bill.
The greedy bill.
The greedy bill, where the Virgin Islands party government, then under the management of Andrew A. Foy, moved to have benefits for legislators go in a direction that is causing an uproar right now. It would have caused an uproar then, and it is now resurfaced as a major issue, and several persons on the campaign platform are calling to have that repeal done for that. Compare that move as it relates to public servants who needs to have better pay.
Well, public servants, or I should say public officers, need to have their rights also enforced. What I mean enforced, or respected I should say, rather than enforced. For example, the ability of a public officer to partake in political activities after work, or political speech after work. You know, they feel that they can't do it because or else they'll be victimized, or they might face other negative consequences at work. They might be fired or whatever have you, just for partaking in political speech. Now, we, under our constitution, have the right, I would say, of freedom of association, and freedom of conscience, and freedom of expression. And so when we as a government, or we as a people, are stifling the political voice of 3,000 plus people, that doesn't really make us a very democratic society, does it? And so part of my campaign promises is to fight to ensure that the political speech and political activities and constitutional rights overall of public officers are respected.
But you know how far that goes? I can recall someone saying to me, you know, they have to be very careful in liking a comment or liking a post on social media if it's political related, because their bosses are insistent you should not be doing that. It sounds really.
Yes. So that is most unfortunate, and I think that one of the reasons why, all the justifications for limiting public officers' freedom of expression is because they have access to information that the general public do not. And so that was one of the justifications, but nonetheless. But speaking of that, one of the things that I haven't heard anybody speak about that we need to definitely have, a Freedom of Information Act.
But that's been one of the things for the House of Assembly over the past few years.
Yes, but look at the campaign season. Who has talked about it? We have not talked in this campaign season about having a Freedom of Information Act. In fact, so many things in this territory are done in the dark. For example, the Public Accounts Committee. That's usually done behind closed doors. And just so the public knows, a Public Accounts Committee, that's a committee of the House of Assembly, which is supposed to hold the government to account. And it does so by reviewing how public monies are being spent. Now, that's usually done behind closed doors. If I get in, or when I get in, I am going to fight to ensure that committee is done in public
spaces.
There may be situations which involve national security where you may need to have it behind closed doors, but the general rule should be that committees of the House should be held in public.
Awesome. All right, let's take this conversation to a different level, and it comes back to what may have sparked your interest in becoming a legislator in the House of Assembly of these Virgin Islands, and that would have been your involvement with the Commission of Inquiry. We know that the form for which you work, still work for that?
Yes.
Form? Yes. Was integral in that process. Did it influence you in any way to make this move?
No, none whatsoever. One of the things that influenced me is that I heard one day on the radio, listening to one of the candidates saying that the reason why the economy is why it is because businesses are too greedy. And that really irritated me. It irritated me into running because it showed me that there's no that person did not actually have the a proper analysis of why the economy is why it is. We have not had economic growth in the territory since before 2015, and it's not because businesses are greedy. It's because there's no money coming in. You can't expect that. You can't expect for the economy to grow when there's no influx of capital into the country, meaning there's no influx of money coming into the country. We live in a country where most of our money leaves the territory even before it's circulated once. You buy something at Right Way, it either goes to Canada or to whoever its supplies are, because we don't produce anything in the country. And so our government has to work very hard to ensure that we maintain a certain level of import of capital into the country, and that's usually done through tourism and financial services.
Awesome. Okay, the clock is kind of coming down, but we want to touch a little bit about this. Every time you try to talk about candidates who are on the campaign trail, when it comes to Daniel, they say the young white boy.
but there are a few other things that got me wanting to run, though.
Okay, let's go there, then we come back to that one.
A lack of justice in the territory. That also caused me to want to run. I didn't see anybody addressing our justice situation in the country, meaning not addressing the fact that there are being cuts to legal aid, but the fact that we need to have a legal aid clinic here in the Virgin Islands to allow the poor to access legal services so that when they go to court, they're not lost within all the rules and regulations of court, which is it's very easy to get lost in those rules if you don't know what to do.
So that's the same as having pro bono representation?
Yeah, so essentially, a legal aid clinic isn't just for criminal matters. Hardly any of us get involved in the criminal system, right? But it's also for, let's say, divorces, child support, protection orders, and even contracts, and looking over, if you're a very poor person but you want to start a business, looking over helping you get that sorted out, is to help the community as a whole. Then we also have our issues in the sister islands where they don't even have where we don't have proper medical facilities. For example, in Anegada,
and Virgin Gorda.
Anegada doesn't have enough nurses. It doesn't have a resident doctor. Just Van Dyke, the same thing. And the cost of living in these places are so high. In North Sound, Virgin Gorda, where a lot of the seniors live, there's no clinic even in North Sound. And Virgin Gorda is a pretty big constituency. We need to sort these things out. And those are some of the reasons why I decided to run, because I want to help sort out those issues.
Awesome. So let's come back to who you are. I'm not going to use that phrase again, but it's what, the easiest way persons identify who you are. And I don't think it's the best way. But what I think the reason is that many persons do not necessarily know of you, know your ancestral line here in the Virgin Islands. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, my father's from here, right? My mother is not. Through my father, we are descended from the Fretts, the Potters, the Davies, and the Penns. And my grandmother was, I think she was responsible for births and deaths in the East End district, or the 8th district, I think. Well, no, she was responsible for births and deaths in the East End Long Look area.
Okay.
And her name was Adalia Davies. Now, before she married my grandfather, Claremont Davies, who was a shipwright, she was a Frett. She was born to a James Frett and to a lady known as Eliza Dodder Potter of Long Look. Yes, and so that's where I come from on that side, and I think it is through my great-grandmother that I have connections to Anegada.
Oh, you are connected to Anegada?
To the Potters, yes.
Oh, yes.
To the Potter end of my family. And on my grandfather's side, well, he used to build the sloops, Tortola sloops, the famous Tortola sloops that used to carry workers in between the Virgin Islands and to the Dominican Republic, where we have a lot of our family and 4th generation Virgin Islanders. Yeah.
Okay, but you don't have a Tola accent.
It really depends, I mean, like, honestly, it does depend on the situation. Because I think right now you can hear it coming in when I start talking about my family.
All right, go right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess sometimes when I'm talking about political issues, I tend to get
formal.
A bit. Well, there's a certain formality to the Virgin Islands accent, but yes, I go in another direction. But I'm comfortable with my roots, Yeah.
Where you did school and you were here all the time?
Yes. I first went to St. George's, then I went to Cedar for primary school, and then the last primary school I went to was Enos Adams. Big up Enos Adams, class of 2003.
Don't be afraid to do it big enough.
Then Elmore Stout High School, where I graduated from 5 Science in 2008. Yes, I love that class, I love that class. And then after that, I went to HSEC, graduated an associate's degree in 2011, went to Barbados to do my law degree, the LLB, and then to the Bahamas for 2 years to finish my legal training with a legal education certificate.
Okay.
So it was an interesting, I'm Caribbean educated.
That's what I realized. I was waiting to hear if you would have said you went over to the US to complete this school or to the UK to complete it. You were strictly Caribbean.
Yes, I'm a regional man. I know.
Right.
Yes, I can talk like a Bajan too. I ain't afraid to talk like them.
Mia Motley. Mia Motley.
I cannot talk like Mia Motley, you know. Mia Motley is one of my political idols, though. She's not afraid to say things how it is, and I also like to say things how they are. I don't like painting pretty pictures of ugly things.
Say how you see it and how you feel it.
But we also need to involve the community in things. Like there's going to be there's been the Red Bay Development Project since 2014, 2015, but the thing is that we need to go to the communities when we're going to have these big projects and say, what is it that you want to see for the development of your community? You have to get the buy-in of the community, you know. You just can't go in there and say, I gonna do this, I gonna do that. It's a done deal. What? And then ask for their input. What kind of nonsense is that? And you don't even say, you don't even go there with, you go there with several plans that you would like to see, but you don't say this is what we're going to do. You ask them, can we do this in your community?
Would you like to see this?
Yes, would you like to see this? This is how governance is supposed to be. And you know, it's not a novel thought, because I'll tell the audience this. If they can accomplish similar things like that in the United States, which is, well, a gazillion times bigger than the Virgin Islands, then we can accomplish such actions here. It is not a novel thought. It is how democracy is supposed to operate.
Okay. All right. As we really come down on the clock, what is the most interesting you would have experienced so far on the campaign trail?
Well, I can tell you the most enjoyable thing. I went to Anegada yesterday and I had Kenny's brownies, and oh my gosh, those things were amazing. Yes, those were amazing. I really did like those brownies were probably the best brownies I've ever had, and those donuts, I personally thought they were supposed to be pancakes, because it's just like it's early in the morning to have donuts, so I was assuming it was a pancake, but they were very delicious. They were nice.
Yes, they are. I had to sample one, but I am just not the sweet tooth type person.
Not you.
So I don't get to go after them, but you know, a lot of people do go after Kenny. The treats that they have there. In this last moment, you can.
But I would say though that one of the things that really got me thinking is actually Janai Call, and he said something very impactful to me. And he said there's a lot of solutions, but how are we going to implement the solutions, right? And that is why I came up with what I was mentioning earlier about community meetings every quarter to decide and on action points that need to be accomplished within the community. And I think that is how we're going to get the solutions done. Now, in terms of my last words, I said, when I'm speaking to the public, I'm speaking for all of us. I don't say my people because I am part of the people, right? So I say we, and I say if we want to make the change, please vote for me, because it is time to make a change. I should say hashtag time to make a change.
Hashtag.
Yes.
Chant down Babylon.
Chant down Babylon. Come, we gonna chant down Babylon one more time.
All right, what a great note to take you out of this edition of The Big Story. Thank you so much, Danielle. It was really a pleasure, and I enjoyed this conversation with you, and I thank you for tuning in with us.